So welcome to the 80/20 Magic Formula presented by Strategex with the legendary Joe Hahn. My name is Maggie Graham, Marketing Director for Strategex, and I'm joined by Jackie Pergandy and David Philippi. We will be your administrators. Some housekeeping things before we get started. There's a chat portal that we will be monitoring throughout the webinar where you can submit your questions. There will be a question and answer period at the end where Joe has agreed to spend as long as you need to address all of your questions. Additionally, we will distribute a recording next week. A quick intro to Strategex. Strategex is a management consulting firm based in Chicago. We're a team of data-obsessed business leaders, analysts, and researchers united in the mission to use data and experience to improve our clients' businesses. Whether our clients are seeking increased revenue, improved margins, higher customer ratings, or increased profitability, we help clients achieve aggressive, profitable, and sustainable growth. And now I'd like to introduce you to our speaker, Joe Hahn. Joe is a vice president at Strategex, where he collaborated with CEO David Philippi to establish the 80/20 profit and growth practice. Since then, Strategex has worked with hundreds of accounts in various industries to generate our favorite thing, profitable market share growth. Before Strategex, Joe earned his stripes as Group Vice President at ITW, where he worked for over 20 years. He also spent 3 years as Division and Group President for Danaher Corporation, and he has spent the bulk of his career implementing 80/20. Joe specializes in business turnarounds and developing strategic growth platforms. He has developed proprietary techniques currently in use by several blue chip companies. Joe is a lifelong learner, mentor, and teacher. He has a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from Northwestern University and an MBA from Lake Forest Graduate School of Management, where he was valedictorian. He taught the capstone course of the MBA program at Edgewood College, and he is a living example of how 80/20 can be used to improve one's quality of life. Because of 80/20, he was able to step down from ITW and spend his days at his favorite job, Strategex, where he has an impressive work-life balance. He finds time to catch his lunch every day, and he can prioritize his beautiful wife and children. Without further ado, please welcome Joe Hahn.
Well, thank you, Maggie. I really appreciate that. That was a wonderful introduction. Every time I hear discussions like that, about halfway through, I start saying, boy, I wonder who they're talking about. And eventually I say, wow, maybe that's me. Maggie keeps adding stuff to this and making it's getting a little bit embarrassing a little bit. But the one thing that is true, 80/20 has made my quality of life exceptionally good. This is the best job I've ever had with the best people I've ever worked with. And all of it's possible because of 80/20. So all of you who are on today, thank you. Thank you for spending a little bit of time with us. We're going to try to make this enjoyable, informative, and maybe have a laugh or two along the way. And so without further ado, let's talk about this magic formula thing. By the way, hope everybody is okay. Hope everybody is safe. Stay safe in this COVID world. Wash your hands, social distance, wear masks. That's kind of all you need to do. Wait a second, that sounds like 80/20 to me. We have to do 3 things and we're safer than most. That's 80/20 in a nutshell, right? So hope everybody is safe. And now we'll talk about kind of what this magic formula is. Why I love the magic formula, right, is that it really is a simple way to kind of encompass a lot of really good and powerful things. Essentially, it's focus, right? The magic formula really drives focus. And what people often talk about when they talk about focus is, I got to focus. If I could just focus, I'd be better. Very few people say, I need less focus. If I could focus less, I'd be better off. What they all say is, I need to focus more. And then they try to find a way to quantify that. And the mistake they typically make is they say, I need to focus more on that and less on that. And that's a really hard thing to pull off, right? It's a really hard thing to quantify. I like to say that the word priority was never meant to be plural. It's a Latin word, right? It's supposed to be priority. There's never more than one. And yet we struggle in our life, right? Day to day, business, with all these multiple things pulling at us. So what the magic formula is, and as you'll see, it is a way to sort of quantify focus and a way to really prove to yourself that focus does work and it does have tangible results. And it's a way of winning those arguments when people say, nah, I think we need to do more stuff. The goal is not to do more stuff, right? The goal is to do the right stuff, right? So, but before I get started, we keep talking 80-20. I think it's fair to at least give a little primer on 80-20, kind of what that is. And so what we start with is a picture of a guy who's got a really, really cool beard. And this guy with the really, really cool beard is named Vilfredo Pareto. And there you see him in the corner. It's really interesting. If you look at Vilfredo, he's bald and he has hair, which is really interesting, right? So he's got a really nice beard and a really smooth palate. And you know what? Really smart guy, and really not been gone for all that long. 80-20, as was noted here on the slide, was discovered not that long ago, early 1900s. So it's only 100 years or so old. Pareto was a guy who did it. He was actually studying for his doctorate. He was an Italian guy studying in Switzerland. And what he found out was that, boy, you know what? Really weird. In his hometown, a few people owned most of the land, and a lot of people didn't own any land at all. And then he thought this was wrong, and he decided to expose this bad thing. And the more he studied it, the more he looked around, the more he found that everywhere he went, whether it was in Italy or any other country in Europe, seemed like 20% of the people owned 80% of the land. So he studied other things, as I like to say, chicken ownership and boat ownership and jewelry ownership. And no matter what he studied, a few inputs were most of the output. 20% of the inputs were most of the output. So he decided to call it the law of imbalance. But as I love to say, with potential copywriting thoughts in mind, he decided to convert that to a Pareto principle, name it after himself. And that's where we are today. And so how does it apply to us? Well, it applies to us like when your car doesn't start in the morning, we don't immediately think about reprogramming the main computer. When the car doesn't start, what we think about is maybe there's no gas, or maybe the battery is bad, right? There's a couple of inputs that we check that is usually the answer, right? So this works day to day, works in our life. As Maggie pointed out, it works in my life. If my wife says it's okay, then it is okay. It doesn't matter what anybody else says. That's my 80, right? So in every way we look at business, life, what have you, this thing focus does work, right? And it tracks back to this 80-20 thing. Now, the key is, how did that transition to business? It transitioned to business with a company called Illinois Toolworks, ITW, which is kind of my alma mater. And the guy that taught it was a guy named John Nichols. John Nichols was one of my mentors. Talk about a lucky person. I'm a guy who learned from John Nichols. When he came to ITW, what he told the Smith family was that, you can fire me if you don't like me, but we're going to do 80-20. And I know you may not like it because I'm talking maybe fewer customers and fewer products. And I know you're not going to like that, but it's going to work. And here's why: because of what I now call the Nichols Pyramids. And so if we put those up on the screen, what you'll see is that there are customers and there are revenue. And if you stop there, right, this is what we've just been speaking about, right? That 20% of the customers or products, but we use customers for this example, 20% of the customers, 80% of the revenue, and 80% of the customers, 20% of the revenue. And most everybody gets that. Most everybody believes that. Most every company we talk to or encounter says, yeah, we 80-20. A few customers mean a lot, and a lot of customers don't mean so much. Big deal. Well, it is a big deal when we start talking about the last pyramid, right? And the last pyramid that we throw up is the pyramid that we call overhead, where 20% of the customers drive only 20% of the overhead, which drive 80% of the revenue. So the whole green thing there, right? That's a very profitable concept, right? That's a very profitable slice. The gray slide, not very profitable. Lots of customers, not much revenue, lots of overhead. In accounting terms, what they would typically do is apply the overhead to the revenue, and they would get it wrong. In this case, what Nichols realized was those big customers, super profitable. Those little customers, not so profitable. And so what we need to do is focus differently. Now, when we think about focusing differently, where people get afraid of 80-20 is Are you telling me I got to get rid of all these customers? I don't want to do that. And the beauty is you don't. But what you need to do, right, is you need to treat them differently, right? So when we talk about the 80-20 key to success, it's about treating them differently. It's about treating them fairly, not equally, but fairly. And the quick example I use for this is, think about the way you deal with your spouse versus the way you deal with your siblings, right? On your spouse's birthday, it's a bigger event. It's romantic cards and it's a lot of gifts and maybe it's a trip and something. With a sibling, it's a phone call, it's a Facebook post, right? We acknowledge both, but we treat them very differently because the spouse is an 80 and the sibling is a 20. And I like to tell people, if you really want to have some fun sometime, just try to wish your wife or husband a happy birthday via Facebook post or text. That's not going to get you in good graces with your spouse. But if you do it with your sibling, it's totally okay because the level of expectation is different. And that's what you need to understand when we talk 80-20, that the level of expectation with your 80s, with your biggest customers, is higher. With your 20s, it's less, right? So that's why this slide means a lot. The big piggy weighs a lot more than all those little piggies, and they need to get treated much differently, right? So understanding that sets the stage now for what I call this magic formula. And the magic formula is so simple, and yet to me so powerful. I never get tired of talking about it, right? And here's what it says. What it says is that anything is equal to 0.8x plus 0.2y. And as I love to say, it's got my two favorite numbers up there, right? It's got 80 and 20, you can see that. And what we designate is that the 0.8x side is the critical few, and the 0.2 side is the insignificant many, or the less significant many, if you will, right? So it looks like it makes a lot of sense. And how does this relate to either our life or our business? Well, whenever I discuss this, I always start with a personal one, and I always start in my closet. You see, if you would have asked David or Maggie or Jackie, what was Joe going to wear today? They would have guessed one of two things, and they would have gotten it right. They would have guessed either a black shirt and khaki pants. Trust me, I'm wearing khaki pants. Or they would have guessed white shirt and dark pants. And one of those would have been right because I don't look very good in much of anything, so I might as well at least simplify and focus my wardrobe selection. Right now, they'd have known it was black today because they had seen these slides. But what I talk about with this is that, have you ever had this happen to you where you're looking for your favorite article of clothing? In this case, my black shirt, right, Strategex shirt, and I can't find it. I go looking in my closet and I look for it and it's not there because it looks like the insignificant many picture that you see up there. It's not in there. I can't see it. So what I say then is the hunt begins, right? The hunt begins. You leave the closet and you go to the folded clothes and you look and it's not there, and the hunt continues, and you go to the folded clothes but not put away yet. And so you look through them and it's not there yet. And now you start digging and the hunt continues, right? And so now you go into the laundry room and you look into the dryer and you open it up and now you've wasted 10 minutes and it's not in there. Those are reds, right? And so now you continue the hunt and you look in the wash machine. It's gonna be wet, but at least you'll satisfy your curiosity. Not there either. And then of course, because you're a guy, right, you will look at the pile of dirty clothes, because if you're a guy and you're like me and you find it there, you'll rescue it. How many of you out there have rescued things from their dirty clothes? I have. You stink anyway, so you'll wear it again. It's not there either. You've wasted 15 minutes, and now in frustration, you go back to your closet, you dig it out hanger by hanger by hanger in this mess, and it was there all the time. Stuck between two hangers, it was cocked and you couldn't find it. It was there, but it's just too much insignificant or less significant items in there, and you couldn't find it. And that's why it takes so long to find stuff. But that's not the way it is, you see, in my closet. Now, the way it works for everybody else, though, if we put the magic formula to work here, is let's say it takes 3 minutes to find something in your closet. Here's why it takes 3 minutes. So bear with me. Oh my God, here's a picture of me. You see what I've got in my closet is I've got a sweater that looks exactly like that, with a big giant Rudolf the red-nosed reindeer nose and Google eyes, and it's not pretty. And that's in my closet, right? Because I'm gonna have to wear that occasionally. My black polo, that's in there too. I'm gonna wear that occasionally. So my black shirt is the critical few, and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer is the insignificant many, but they're all in the closet together, right? And we treat them all the same. So do the math. Anything, the time it takes to find something in my closet is equal to zero point 0.8, the 80, times 3 minutes, plus zero point 0.2, the 20, Rudolph, times 3 minutes, and by God, 2.4 plus zero point 0.6 equals 3. And you know what? It does take me 3 minutes to find something in my closet, but not anymore, because that's not the way my closet is organized. You see what I did with my closet? I took Rudolph and my Halloween stuff and my Thanksgiving stuff and all the stuff I wear very infrequently. I took them out of my closet. I put them in a couple of cardboard boxes. I carried them downstairs and I put them underneath the stairs in the basement, right? And all that's left in my closet now is the black shirt, the white shirt, the khaki pants, the dark pants, a few polo shirts, a couple of athletic stuff. Very few things are in there. So now when I need to go and find my shirt, it should be easier to find, right? But people say this is nuts. You've taken 80% of the things you own out of your closet and you've made them harder to find. You put them in the basement. You got to walk down there, dig them out, look through them. That's crazy to make it harder to find 80% of the stuff you own. But does the math tell us that? Well, let's let the math have its say, right? So after 80-20, here's how it works, right? How long does it take me to find my black shirt when there's nothing else in there but the black shirt and a few friends? I'll give you a minute. Won't take me a minute, but I'll keep the math easy and make it a minute. Now, how long does it take me to find Rudolph? I'll argue it's going to take me twice as long. Yes, it'll take me twice as long to go down there and dig through it. So do the math. 0.8 plus 1.2 equals 2, and I'll be darned. I have just reduced the time it takes to find things in my closet by 33%, and all I did was treat them differently. So what you see is the magic formula. What it does is it allows you to mathematically prove the value of treating things differently, right? So this applies to your closet, go do it at home, but it also applies to business things, on-time delivery, accounts receivable, inventory, growth, you name it. So let's walk through some of those and let's see how that formula actually does apply. Let's start with on-time delivery. Actually, a true story. Running a business one time that had an on-time delivery of 80%. And on 80% on-time delivery, that's not very good. If I go to the grocery store and 4 out of 5 times they have milk and 1 out of 4 times or 5 times they don't, I'm not going there anymore, right? I need it there all the time. And yet we tend to accept 80% as, yeah, it's okay. Well, this company knew 80% was bad. And so what I said was, the reason why you're 80% on-time delivery is that you treat everything the same. You treat your 80s the same as you treat your 20s. The really important big piggies on the slide and the really less important little piggies, and you treat them all the same. And here's how you get it. Look at the formula. 0.8 times 80% on-time delivery plus 0.2 times 80% on-time delivery is 0.64 plus 16. That's how you get 80% on-time delivery. So with this company, what I said, I'll never forget, was we're going to fix this really fast. We're going to get to 90% within a few weeks. And they didn't believe me. What they said was we need a new warehouse management system or we need to add a lot of people. And I said, no, we need a couple of cardboard boxes. And they said, pardon? I said, we need a couple of cardboard boxes. And what are you going to do with those? Well, I took the cardboard boxes and I wrote the number 80 on one of them and I wrote the number 20 on the other, and I walked down to shipping. And when I got to shipping, I set the boxes down. And I said to my IT person, can you create something so that when the orders come out, I can tell by looking at them whether it's an 80 or a 20, an important customer or a less important one? And he was so excited. Yes, I can do this. It'll come out and the 80s will be green and the 20s will be red. I can do this. I said, great. I said, so here we go. We have a new rule in place. The 80s go in the 80s box. The 20s go in the 20s box. We will not ship a 20s order until the 80s box is empty. And if in the middle of when the 80 box is empty, if we're in the middle of shipping a 20 and an 80 order shows up, we will cease to ship the 20 and we will ship the 80. So what was the result of that? Well, you can probably guess, right? What happened was our 80s got to 100% because there was such focus on getting the 80s out the door and they were getting them out immediately. What happened to the 20s? See, this is the challenge. The 20s went down to 50%. They got worse. Now, here's what I would tell you. Your business is dependent upon those 80s. So making them really happy is really important. So I would argue making them to 100 versus 80 is a really good thing to do. Yes, you will find that many 20s will be unhappy, but what does the math tell you? The math tells you is that 0.8 plus 0.1 is 90% on-time delivery. And as I love to say with 80-20, it's a math problem. So look, by 2 cardboard boxes and a change in focus with the magic formula to prove the case, on-time delivery jumped 10 points. The people were amazed. They were like, well, yeah, but wait a second. Now we've got a lot of small customers that aren't quite so happy with us. So I said, great, treat them differently. Make different promises, but let's keep our promise. And the different promise was lead time. What we said was the 80s are going to have a very short lead time, from 3 days down to 24 hours. For the 20s, it was going to go from 3 days to anywhere from today to 5 weeks out. And you'll fall into somewhere in that category. Not to say 80-20 is easy. There's some tough conversations you'll have, but again, look at the math. The customers that chose to accept our new terms, the siblings that accepted the text, if you will, right, that stayed with us, and most of them did, we didn't service all of them perfectly, but look at the math. 0.8 times 100%, that stayed the same. 0.2 times 95%, which we improved merely by lead time. 0.8 plus 0.19, 99% on-time delivery. This is how easy it is. This is how fast it can be. But the hard part is you really have to be committed to it. But the magic formula helps you because it helps you prove the case. It is a math problem. So just on-time delivery, or maybe there's some other things that'll help with too. Well, it'll certainly help with inventory. Inventory will help with a lot. A lot of companies I've gone to, I've walked in and they've had lots of inventory, 3 months on hand, 4 months on hand. And once again, what I tell them is, do you understand why you have 4 months on hand? Because all of the SKUs that you buy, all the things that you stock, you treat them all the same. So your 80s, the things that turn a lot, 4 months on hand. The 20s, the things that you buy very infrequently, 4 months on hand. They go through the same process. We treat them all the same. What's the math? 3.2 plus 0.8, 4. That's how you get it. So how do we make this much better? Well, for me, what I would do is I would go to the people who are in charge of the supply chain, the purchasers, the buyers, whomever, and say, look, I'm not going to ask you to make everything go down. I'm not going to ask you to reduce inventory and everything. And that's the trap. The trap is when we attempt to reduce inventory, we tell our people, you got to do it across everything. And they lose heart. That's a very hard thing to do. What we say is, look, we're going to allow you to work far less hard on most of the stuff. In exchange for that first page, right? The first page listing of all the things that you buy, the things that you do most often, I want paperless POs, I want fax ban, I want vendor managed inventory. Get really good at the critical few, get those down to 1 month on hand. And in exchange, I'll let you buy the other stuff once, twice a year, something like that. Know where it is, put it in stock. I understand. But I'm not going to make you work hard on that. You can be sloppy there. So here's kind of the way this works. You can be a little sloppy on the 20s and be razor sharp on the 80s. And that's different than the way most companies operate, which is to try to be okay with everything. It's better to be razor sharp on what's most important. So does the math support it? Has to, and it does. Look, 0.8 times 1 month on hand, which, believe me, you can get there if you focus on just a few things. 0.2 times 8 months on hand. Look what we've just done. We've doubled our months on hand for those 20s, but the math supports it volumetrically. 0.8 plus 1.6 equals 2.4. Look at that. We have taken our inventory months on hand down 1.6, which people would give their eye teeth to do. And we've done it without doing anything more than changing our focus and validating it mathematically, which is what this very simple magic formula does, right? The next one, right? The next one we have is accounts receivable. One of my favorites, actually, because again, most people do it by invoice age. And again, what you're learning already is the correct way to do it is to start in the biggest invoice. We can tell if a company is doing 80-20 properly by merely walking to accounts receivable. And that's sort of the trick we play, right? Are you doing 80/20? Yes, we are. Take me to accounts receivable. Why there? Because then I'll know. And you walk there and you say, what are you working on? And they say, I'm working on AAA engineering. And then you know they're not doing 80/20. They're doing it alphabetically, AAA engineering. If they're working on the biggest invoice first, then you know they get the magic formula. And how is that shown? It's shown this way. And I'll spend a little time on it just to give you some idea of the impact. So, this is a kind of real example, but I've genericized it. Company XYZ, $20 million company. They got 65 days of day sales outstanding, despite having 30-day terms. We give them terms, the customers decide what they're going to pay us by. And by the magic formula, again, you can see how we get there. 0.8 times 0.65, 0.2 times 0.65. That's how we get to 65 days on hand, right? So let's apply the magic formula again and focus only on getting the 80s within the 30-day agreed term. So all we're trying to do here is get the critical few customers to do what they said they were going to do, pay us in 30 days. And by the way, I know it's going to take a lot of work. It's not just as easy as that. So we're going to allow the other ones to kind of slide a little bit. We'll let them slide all the way to 95. Short term, we'll need to fix that too, by the way, but short term, we'll let it go. And look what happens. 0.8 times 30 plus 0.2 times 95, 24 plus 19 equals 43. We've reduced our days on hand, our day sales outstanding by 22 days, merely by changing the focus. How important is that? How important is that? Well, let's talk about that for a second. The importance of 22 days of DSO improvement, right? So let's say we've got company XYZ, that company that we talked about, and let's say the DSO is 50 days in the industry. The industry standard is 50 days. Let's use the US prime interest rate of 3.25%. Well, if you do the math, and I don't have 2 hours to do it, so you'll have to trust me on this, but you can do it, and you should have your people do it. What it really says is that this company has got $850,000 of cash flow trapped in AR if their DSO is 65 days. So what that means is we're 15 days worse than the average, which means that compared to the average, we get $850,000 of cash flow. And again, cash flow is everything. Businesses don't go out of business because they can't sell anything. Businesses go out of business oftentimes in their periods of greatest growth because they can't pay the light bill. They don't have any cash. So losing cash in AR is anathema to success, right? So how do we fix that? Well, every 5 days cut from their DSO, if you do the math, frees up about $280,000 of trapped cash flow, right? So we've just taken this down by 22 days. If we can cut the DSO by 22 days, the entire $850,000 of trapped cash flow is freed up for us to do really good, solid, positive things, investing in equipment, investing in people, investing in sales, investing in new product development, as opposed to waiting for our bills to get paid. And what does it say? What it says is that, look, does that really mean that I'm going to have to allow some things to get worse in order for a few things to get better? Well, what it really means is you're going to have to allow some things to get worse in order to get a few things to get better. Yes, that's exactly right. You cannot drive everything at the rate of improvement, and it's important that you don't try. And what I love about the magic formula, folks, is that this is a tool that enables you to make that case. Because when you go to your own people and say, look, we can let things go in order to get really good here, the chances are they're not going to believe you. It's counterintuitive. It's counterintuitive. The math, the magic formula helps you. Now, can you take this other places? Sure. Eventually, you'll stop using the magic formula. You'll just know it intuitively. And that'll start leading to some other cool stuff, like, for instance, growth, right? So we all want to grow our business, right? And so think about the way we traditionally try to grow our business, right? We send our people out there and we say, you know what? You got to make 8 calls a day. That's how you got to do it. You got to make 8 calls a day. And so we send people out and they spend an hour at each customer, right? And here's how it works, right? They go from customer A to customer. The only two that matter, right, are A and B. But you know what? We go to customer 150 and customer 300 and customer 412 and customer 600, and we rationalize it, right? Don't we? by saying, well, they're right on the way. And they're right on the way, so we got to stop by. And what we would say is that, and again, you can put in the magic formula, that'll be your homework assignment. If you did that, what you find is that doesn't make any sense, right? Doesn't make any sense because those customers 150, 300, 412, and 600, you can service them, but do it differently. Maybe through distribution, maybe through e-commerce, but they're not big enough to warrant a sales call because the sales call is expensive. The sales call is where you get results, and the small customers aren't worth the value. So what we say is that's not the way we got to do our typical sales calls. Instead, what we say is, you know what? Let's just go A to B. And by the way, because that's only half a day, now we can get 2 more big customers in and only need 1 salesperson to do it. So wait a second, are you telling me that I can call on fewer customers with fewer resources and get better results? Well, only if you believe the magic formula, right? If you believe the magic formula, you're going to do that, right? So actually, I've done this before a number of times. I've actually worked with a friend one time where their company insisted that they make 8 calls per day. I could not get them to change their mind on making 8 calls per day. So I had to use the magic formula to kind of prove to them, right, in the end, that you know what, we can still skin this cat a little bit. So what I told them eventually to do was this. I said, look, here's what I want you to do. I want your salespeople to make the first 6 calls on the same 6 customers every single day, really efficiently, between 8 and like 9:45, and get them out of the way. And they told me at that time, well, if they only spend like 15 minutes at every customer, they won't have any time to do anything more than stop in, say hello, and leave. And I said famously, that's right. And if they try to do something dumb, like give you an order, don't take it. It'll only slow you down. So there you go. So in effect, as you see here, what I said was, look, by 9:45, I want you done. At 10 o'clock, then, I want you to spend the rest of the day on the 2 whales. We'll still do 8 calls a day, but we won't spend an hour at each call. We'll spend 15 minutes at the 6 that don't matter, and then we'll spend 3 to 4 hours on the 2 that do. And we'll do it Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. And by doing this, this company that I worked with, this pilot area, she went from 37th in the country out of 50 to number 1 in the country out of 50 within 6 months' time. We then repeated it at another pilot, and eventually then, finally after that, the people who ran the business said, you know, the stupid thing is that we're forcing them to make these 6 calls. What we ought to do is just have them call on the whales. And that's in effect what they wound up doing. But we needed to use the magic formula to prove the case, right? So in the end, here's what the magic formula tells you as we kind of wind it up and start thinking about which questions you might have. What this comes down to is understand we're trying to become razor sharp on the critical few, and we're going to forgive ourselves for being much less than razor sharp on the less significant many. That's a hard thing to do. It's hard to give yourself permission to do that. What we try to do is we'd say we're going to focus more on these things, but still do a good job on these guys, and you get frustrated because you never get there. So the key is give yourself permission to become slightly worse on the insignificant many in order to become razor sharp on the critical few. And while we all understand that intuitively, where we miss it is that we have a hard time proving it. So the magic formula now added to your arsenal will allow you then to, when somebody's a disbeliever, to say, look, let me talk to you about AR. Let me talk to you about on-time delivery. Let me talk to you about virtually anything, right? Sales growth. Let me talk to you about these things. Let's plug them into the formula and let me prove my case. And don't forget, let me talk to you about your closet. By the way, your closet should be redone. Your basement should be redone. And so as I wrap up this, what I will tell you is that there's another really good lesson to think about when it comes down to your closet. So this is a true story. Believe this or not, nobody has ever been killed in a tornado when they have been hiding underneath the stairs in their basement, right? So where you put Rudolf and his friends underneath the stairs in your basement, no one's ever been killed down there. So here's another 80-20 for you. If ever a tornado was coming, that's the time to go and be with Rudolf. You go under the stairs of your basement, and one of two things are going to happen. Number one, you won't get killed. So that's really a good thing. But number two, think about this. If you do happen to get killed, you'll be the first person ever to be killed while hiding underneath the stairs in your basement during a tornado. And the Weather Channel will probably name something after you. They'll call it the Maggie Graham effect, where she's the first person ever to get killed, right? So 80-20 works for you even in death, but it absolutely positively works for you in life. It works for you in the way you treat your spouse. It works for you in the way you treat your siblings. It works for you in the way you manage your world. And then when you get to work, growth, AR, on-time delivery, you name it, new product development, the magic formula will work for you. So, questions that we've got, I see one that just came in. Can we apply this to commission for our salespeople? No question about that. No question about that. You can apply the magic formula to commission, right? So how do you do that? Well, there's a couple ways to look at that. First of all, we can say that if we're calling on the right customers, right, I'm going to give a bigger commission on that. Well, boy, I can't afford to do that. I'm going to give a bigger commission for this and that. Why would I do that? It's going to cost me more money. No, it won't, because the magic formula will tell you that more money spent on the biggest orders pays itself back very handsomely. And so you can afford to give more commission there and less commission on the insignificant many, and you're still getting the right amount of growth. And maybe you'll pay more in commission in the end, maybe, but only if you get the growth. If you don't get the growth, you'll wind up spending less on commission, or at least the same. Now, it can also apply to the salespeople themselves. Are all your salespeople of equal quality? I would argue that they're not. Some are better, some are not so good. Can you have differentiable commissions based upon their talent level? Plug that into the magic formula. See what the magic formula tells you. And my guess is that it's going to tell you, yeah, you know what? I can spend more time focusing on those critical few and less time focusing on the insignificant many. So with that, I think I got through about 41 minutes or so. So I'm a tad early. So that leaves some time for any questions that have come in. If there have been any, I will be delighted to take them right now. Are we seeing any, Jackie?
Yes. The first one is, how do you determine your 80s versus your 20s?
Yeah, so excellent question. Again, this is a math problem. Very important that you do it as such, right? Because if we do it with sort of what we think it is, then that's not going to work. So the easiest way to do that is, so take your annual sales for any 1 year period. Let's say it's $1 million, right? Pick a number, $1 million in sales. Now take your number one customer, add up their sales. Number two, add their sales to it. Number three, add their sales to it. And keep going until you get to $800,000. So $800,000 is 80% of $1 million, right? So that's 80% of your revenue. And look how many customers made that up. What you will find, unerringly, Pareto never lies, is that that's roughly 20% of your customer base. So the 20% of your customers that make up 80% of your revenue, those are the critical few, and we call those the 80s. And people say, well, if they're the 20s, shouldn't we call them 20s? No, we like to use the big number. So the big customers are the 80s. The 80s are defined as the 20% of your customers that drive 80% of your revenue. And by the way, it applies to your products as well. 20% of your products and services that drive 80% of your revenue, those are the 80s also. So that's the way you look at it. Other questions?
Do you find 80-20 to be more impactful personally or professionally?
Yeah, so it's funny. In all the years I've done this, I've never gotten that question. So kudos to the person who asked it. I've had certainly more impactful personally, without question. And that's really hard. It's really hard to say because I owe everything, right, from a business perspective, without question, to the mentors who have taught me 80-20. I mean, it's the way I think, right, 80-20 because of those mentors. But it was not until I applied it to my life to focus on my wife and my son and my daughter as my 80s to change the way I view myself financially. It clearly, the personal side made sense. My gravitating to Strategex, the best job I ever had, that was a decision based on 80-20 for sure. So yes, But I will say this, the answer to the question is whether you believe it's more impactful business-wise or personally, what I would tell you is you can't do one or the other. You can't do one or the other. You can't just turn it on and off. I encourage you to apply 80-20 to the personal life so that when you go to work, it's natural. And vice versa. I encourage you to apply 80-20 to the business side, because then when you get home, you'll treat the right people the right way and your life will be the better for it.
Would it be safe to assume that net profitability is given away the more 20s you try to serve?
Yeah, there's no question. So is net profitability surrendered the more 20s you attempt to serve? The answer is no question, yes. In fact, for those of you who haven't done this before, if you look at the bottom 25% of the customers on your current roster, they will add up to really no more than 1% or 2%, and probably less of your total revenue. 25% of your customer base, less than a point or two. Do they absorb more than 1% or 2% of your cost, of your overhead, of your attention? No question. So it doesn't make any sense, right? These least important, smallest customers absorb way more effort and way more time and way more cost than they should. So the answer to that question is that, frankly, your largest customers are subsidizing your smallest ones, and that needs to be fixed.
How do you apply this to a startup if the whales haven't been identified yet?
Always a great question. So applying it to a startup, right, is I don't have 80-20. There's no numbers to help me with this. So what I tell them is that in a startup, be very wary in a startup of what I call intended strategy and realized strategy. Virtually everybody that starts up the business says, I have an intended strategy and I'm going to make TV remotes, right? And then they go 2 months and they haven't got any orders. So somebody then orders 10,000 to floss your teeth. And we say, you know what? I'll make that because I'll make anything, right? And we do that because we put cost into our business that we have to cover somehow. So the way you apply it to a startup is to say, what are the things that drive my business? I'm going to stick to my intended strategy. And above all, I am not going to put in costs that I can't afford. So in a startup, what you say is, I'm going to put in only the cost I need to cover where I'm at as I grow through my intended strategy. We don't add costs just in case we grow. Especially in a startup, we add it as we can justify it. So, again, you don't throw customers away. When you get an order from a customer in a startup, make sure that it fits your intended strategy. If it does, great. If it doesn't, why am I doing it?
We're generally obsessed with statistical relevance in regards to areas like survey and customer input techniques. Can sample size in the top 20% of the accounts be trusted?
Yeah. In fact, not only can sample size in the top 20% be trusted, I would argue it's the only thing that matters. One thing that we specialize in at Strategex, and many companies do this, is voice of the customer work, trying to get input from our customers to help us tell us what we should be doing. And the problem is that those surveys are often expensive, and oftentimes those surveys are unrevealing. People use things like SurveyMonkey, and they survey all of them. Really, at the end of the day, what 80-20 will show you is that in the end, really only the 80s matter. So what we say is, do we survey the 80s? You bet. We survey them in more depth than probably you've ever thought of doing. And that will help your company become better. So again, we're not trying to get an inch deep and a mile wide. We're trying to get an inch wide and a mile deep. And so not only can that data be trusted, in my mind, it's the only data that's relevant. So listen to your 80s. They'll tell you what matters.
Can the 80-20 approach be applied to products and services as well as customers?
Yeah, of course, yes, without question. If you're a service business, a distribution business, you name it, products, big part of it. And in fact, as you get more and more ingrained in 80-20, what you'll learn is that it's really inappropriate to merely look at customers or merely look at products. You must look at the intersection of the two, which answers the question, who buys what? The more you can study who buys what you'll find is that the business that matters most is your best customers buying your best product. So I use the expression long run, standard, big. Long run production or service work, standard things, the things we do most with large customers. The more your business is predicated on long run, standard, big, the better. And that fits your magic formula, right? That fits in the 0.8 section of that. So yes, products and customers and services, they all apply.
Last question, maybe. How do I use this during the COVID crisis? Our revenues are down 40 to 50%.
Yeah, so this is uncharted waters for everybody, right, with COVID, and so what I would tell you is that there's an expression in business which is never let a good crisis go to waste, right? And so I think what COVID does and has done is it forces us to come to grips with the inefficiency of our business, with the waste in our business, right? So when you look at a business that's down 40 and 50%, right, what you first take a look at is go back to if I was a startup, and what is the core of my business? What am I really here to do? What is my long run standard big, right? So understand what's key and core, right? And do what we call a zero up on that. And the zero up on that says, if all I had was 40 to 50% and it was all core, what would I need? Now, maybe out of the 40 to 50%, maybe only 30% is relevant. What would I need to do that? And then understand what that level of profitability is. Does that mean you're going to shrink your business to that level? Absolutely not. But what I do advocate is be brave on paper. At least let it tell you what reality is. What I would also say, though, is this, that we're in uncharted waters. We're in crazy times. So what happens is this, that if you're down 40, 30, 50%, but you're not just guessing, but that it will come back, this is the time that you probably will accept business that you wouldn't otherwise accept to get you through these times. Because one thing for sure, the biggest mistake made in 80-20 is when people get rid of 20 customers and products, they get rid of the insignificant many, but they don't change their cost structure. That makes the business actually less profitable. What 80-20 says I can do is I can shed an insignificant cost faster than I shed revenue, right? And I can get to my core more quickly. If you're to the point where it's going to come back, then what you say is, for right now, I'm going to accept a little lower percentage profitability in order to get through these times. But what I'd argue is that that's a good time to talk to people who have been through this process, talk to people who have done 80-20. 80-20 is not cookbook. It is not formulaic. The magic formula notwithstanding, everyone is different. So if you're in that situation, talk to some people like us that have actually done this stuff. And my guess is there's an answer there within 80-20. I can promise you this. I have never found a situation in my career where 80-20 hasn't helped me. And believe it or not, I've outperformed the industry in my businesses much more during down times than in good times. Because look, during good times, everybody does well. During the tough times, that's where you separate the haves from the have-nots. And so if you're one of those people that are in that situation and you want to be one of the haves, 80-20 is a really, really great technique to help you focus and get there.
We got one more.
All right.
Some products can only exist when they address the very long tail. This might seem like a paradox in light of the magic formula. How do you reconcile?
Yeah, so and I always say beware the anecdote, right? So I will always start with the magic formula and just kind of get to what the answer is, purely from the formula. But then of course you have to add nuance to it, right? And so what you'll say is, yeah, but you know what? Here's the thing: this 80 product only exists because of all these long tail items. Okay. So what I would then recommend is that we adjust. Go into your data set and pull out all of those 80s that have got long tails tied to them, pull them out, and then let's get to not the gray, but the black or white, and rerun the magic formula again. My guess is that in your business, in any business, there will be gray. There will be some things that are not perfectly clear. What happens to most people is they see the gray and they go, doesn't apply, probably better not do this. What we say is, look, pull the gray out, see what's left. And what you'll find is, oh my goodness, I took out all the things that are confusing. And yet, you know what? There are things we're doing that just flat out can't be justified. Attack those, attack the cost around that. And you won't just take that cost out. You will apply it to better things. So what I would argue is those things that are tied like that, pull those out, rerun the data. The rules of 80-20 kind of are, don't jump to conclusions, listen to the data, and you're never done. Don't jump to conclusions, listen to the data, and you're never done. So if you go down a certain data set hole and it doesn't tell you anything, don't lose heart. Don't lose heart. Try another cut at it, and eventually you're going to find your way, because the data is there. What we like to say is we beat the data until it confesses. It will confess, but you got to keep beating it.
Say I decide to commit to 80-20. What kind of profitable growth can I expect?
Yeah, so here's what I would tell you, that I use the expression that the ox is slow, but the earth is patient, which means that you can move at whatever pace you would like. I have seen it where we have taken a business that was 10 points of profitability and made it 20 points of profitability in a year. That's very rare. People generally don't want to move that fast. But what I can say is that you can add a point or two of profitability to your business within 6 months to a year, almost invariably. In fact, I've never seen a case where that wasn't the situation. So wherever you're at, if you want to add a point or two of profitability, you're 10%, you want to be 12%, 80-20 will get you there, and it'll get you there within a year, and it'll get you there without risk. I think at Strategex, we're in the billions of dollars of op income that we've helped our clients get to. The best part is that we've done that without risking anything. Frankly, that's why it works so well for me. I'm a chicken at heart. I'm not going to take any chances. I want it to work. I'm a math problem. And so that's the beauty of 80-20. It can get you a point or two if you'd like that. It can get you more. It can go even slower than that. But you can hang your hat on a point or two within 6 months. And I think I'm in safe harbor saying that.
The 80-20 rule has many applications in our work and personal lives. However, are there opportunities to misapply this tool and make critical mistakes?
Yeah, I call it running with scissors. There are lots of opportunities to make mistakes with 80-20. I suppose at the end of the day, that's probably why I have a job, because I've already made all those mistakes for you. So you call me and I'll let you know not to make those same ones. But yeah, there certainly are. I'll give you a couple of classic ones, right? So one of the classic one is, these are fourth quartile products. These are low level 20s. We're going to get rid of all those. Yeah. But a big customer buys both the big stuff and the little stuff, and we get rid of the little stuff and they're upset with us, and now they don't buy the big stuff anymore. That's one of those gray areas. We got to think about that, right? Here's another classic one. All these little SKUs, we're going to get rid of all those. Those are crazy. Yeah. They happen to be your aftermarket business, right? So we just got rid of our aftermarket business, what happens to be our most profitable business. So before you do that, yes, you'd probably better segment out the aftermarket business and rerun the data without it. 2 examples of a dozen. So.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Any parting words from you, Joe?
No, thank you very much. We're always here to help. So if you want to reach out to us, do so. We're here.
So our official conclusion, thank you for attending the 80-20 Magic Formula. This was just a taste of our 80-20 profit and growth practice. So please contact us to learn more about our full offering. Or if you're curious about how 80-20 could help your business improve, check us out at strategex.com. If you're ready to transform your company, we can help you develop an action plan. Our strategies work 100% of the time, so contact us to start your transformation. We're more than happy to help you through it. We're not consultants, we're teachers dedicated to your results. Please follow us on social media to stay up to date on all things Strategex, thought leadership news, and future webinars. We will release the recording next week. check your inbox for Strategex mail. From all of us at Strategex, we appreciate your time.